Check this out. I was watching this just now. It's something on tariffs with what's the guy's name? Gary Stevenson. It's like an English economist and I guess YouTuber. And he's talking to this guy Ha-Joon Chang, who's a South Korean economist, and they're talking about can tariffs make you rich? That's the title of the video. So this tariffs topic keeps coming around, and you're like eventually, oh, I guess I have to learn what tariffs are, how they work, and whatever else. So now I kind of have a basic understanding of what tariffs are compared to before. And so now I'm going to try and tell these two experts that they're wrong, because that's what the internet's for, right? Right?
What do you think about tariffs as a concept? What do you think about Trump's tariffs plans? Where do you think will they improve living standards for Americans?
Yeah, well, first of all, tariff.
Yo, first of all, this guy's kitchen. Whose kitchen are they in? I assume this is Gary Stevenson's kitchen where he does his show from. And guy's a multi-millionaire. That's what it is a little bit with these communist types, right? Why is it so utilitarian? Right? Why is there no beauty in your kitchen? Why is it ugly? Why is it just like simple straight lines? Why is there no artistic individualism or expression there?
So the most successful use of tariff is based on this idea of infant industry protection. Yeah? So the idea is basically that the governments of economically backward nations need to protect and nurture their industries through tariffs, but also other means like subsidies and so on, so that they can grow up and compete with superior foreign firms, even
Okay. Infant, what was the actual phrase?
infant industry protection. Yeah?
Infant industry protection. So what's the idea here? The idea is that let's say it's a specific industry. So in France, they want to get into, I don't know, chip production. Maybe they don't make any chips in France, right? So they want to get into chip production. And so they start out doing it and they don't have a lot of expertise and it costs a lot to they have to build a factory and they have to train up people and whatever else. And so there's all this additional cost to them getting started and maybe their first ones aren't so great and different, maybe they have some regulation stuff or whatever. And so the cost overall for them to make a chip of a certain standard turns out to be higher than in other countries. And so the idea would be then if it's 20% higher cost to make your own chip, then you would make the incoming foreign chip 20% more expensive. So a chip of the same quality is of the same price or maybe even slightly more expensive for the foreign one to nurture your native industry so that they can still sell their product at a profit and at the same time be competitive, at least in the local market, even though they wouldn't then be competitive in the international market. And that will then enable them to get to a point where they're as efficient in producing this item as their foreign counterparts and then can get into the game of import and export. Here, even though he's using the phrase infant industry, he then instantly talks about nations that are infant. Let's see exactly what he said.
basically that the governments of economically backward nations.
Economically backward nations. So he moves instantly from the initial concept that he puts forward of infant industry protection to economically backward nations. It's not about so you could be economically here and we could be economically here in terms of the GDP or the cost of living or whatever it is, right? Could be better in this nation than in this nation, but this might still be economically backwards of this nation because it's still coming up through systems or norms or paradigms of economics. That's interesting the way he's using the language backwards there to say that, that if because of countries like America or the West, right, where they're considered ahead of these other countries, it doesn't therefore matter if they're economically doing better or worse. He wants to favor them nevertheless by using this term backwards, as in they're behind of them, rather than not doing as well in the market currently by current measures.
Basically, that the governments of economically backward nations need to protect and nurture their industries through tariffs, but also other means like subsidies and so on.
Yeah, so they need to protect and nurture all of their industries. So here he's saying that if you're an economically backward nation, that even if you were making like grapes and your grape production is really good and you produce cheaper grapes and you can compete on the international market, you still might tariff because you're an economically backward nation. So in order to get yourself up to the economic position or advance yourself forward so that you're not backwards economically, you're allowed to apply tariffs to industries that are not infant and do not need protection.
That they can grow up and compete with superior foreign firms eventually, but while they...
Okay, so again, then he goes back to the foreign firms. So now he's talking about specific industries again. So he's not being super clear, but we'll stick with him. We'll keep rolling with the guy.
Develop, they need to be protected. And, the hint is in the name. I mean, it's based on the idea of child rearing. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay, so now he's going to go back to the idea of the infancy. That, you need to protect your children and educate them. And so you might need to invest in them so that later they can be great doctors or masters of industry. He's going to say something along these lines, I guess.
I mean, in the same way that you could send your kids to work at the age of 5 or 6, as
many
the
people
Victorians
did in history.
Yeah. And today many countries are still doing, many poor countries. And that will, in the short run, save you money because you don't have to pay for the kids' the education, food, accommodation. He will support himself. Yeah? But this will mean that this guy can never become, I don't know, nuclear physicist or the economist.
Economist,
Yeah, that's right. God forbid. Yeah, the architect. Yeah. He cannot become a high productivity person if he doesn't go to school, go to eventually, hopefully, university. Yeah? So you need to send the kid to school until it kind of grows up, and then push it into the other labor market. Yeah.
But what Trump is doing is not that.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like suddenly saying, okay, I have this 45-year-old son who's not doing very well.
No,
I'm going to protect him. Yeah.
Okay.
This is nonsensical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it nonsensical to want to protect your 48-year-old son, however old he said the son is in this example? I don't know if it's like he's still your son. You still want to protect him. I mean, in this example as well. So this is the problem with argument from analogy. Taking advantage of this word infant, which has emotion attached to it. So you're like, oh, the poor infant, like think of the children. We've got to protect the baby. And then, just casually being able to refer to America here as like this middle-aged son who's not doing so well. But in many cases, they're okay. So firstly, in this analogy, then eventually the 45-year-old son grows old and dies. So that's the ultimate conclusion of your terrible analogy, is that America I mean, eventually all civilizations or whatever, I suppose, die. Like nothing's permanent, right? This too shall pass. But that's what you're saying is this is no longer worthy of investment. This is as good as it's going to get. Like there's no point in investing into a middle-aged person, someone my age. Oh, um, uh, they now should be big and strong enough to go out and provide for themselves. They don't need any more help, and they'll soon be dying anyway. We need to concentrate on these younger industries, but they really mean nations or something, because here they've not really mentioned any. They don't really care about any specific industry, so it's not about industries. It's really about the nations that they seem to favor over others. And so what they're not really looking at, I would say, like the best argument that I've heard on this so far was from Romanian TV. I'll try and pull up his video now while I'm talking. So our products are more expensive than the foreign equivalent in many cases, if we live here in the Western world. So why is that? Well, we have all these regulations because we think it's a good idea. And maybe it is. I'm not saying it's not right now, okay? So we have all these regulations, like safety regulations and minimum wage and HR stuff, compliance and DEI, that all raise the cost of producing anything in our countries. Now, maybe those are good things, right? Maybe these are very important things because then, our employees, our workers are not at danger, and they're not children who are working, they're adults and they're in safe environments and they are getting paid a living wage, and then hopefully they can afford to like live a fulfilling life and everyone's happy. So companies then go, well, I'm going to go and if I'm allowed to do this, I'm going to go and make my product elsewhere where none of these rules exist, and I'm going to make my product like infinitely cheaper, or like hugely cheaper, infinitely, and make my product a lot cheaper over there, including the cost of shipping it in, make a better profit by having it over there, by getting around all this regulation. So that's the reason why we would need to have tariffs on products coming in to make our products competitive. If we believe in these things, if we believe in that these protections for workers and so on are very important, and that that's the reason why we have them for our people. When it comes to importing stuff from other countries, there's two ways of doing it. One way of doing it is what we're going to do now and say, hey, here's some tariffs. So the foreign product is the same price as the local product, or maybe even a little bit more expensive, such that you're incentivized to buy the local product, or other companies are incentivized to maybe come and produce their product in our countries, where they also have to adhere to all these additional rules and norms and regulations. And so then those products that get better, right? But the imported ones are the companies who just go, oh, well, we're going to keep importing ours. It's still cheaper to make it in China, or it's equal profit, but whatever, we find it easier to operate here. We've been here a long time. Then you still have these products being produced in these bad ways, right? In these ways where these workers are stuff made by children, stuff made by workers who are breathing in stuff all the time, or in other dangerous or to your health or like and directly to your life practices. So the other way of doing it would be to say, we won't import your product if it's made in these other ways. So if you want to do trade with us, then you have to stop producing it by children. You have to have all these safety laws. You have to have all this other stuff. And then in this way, you're equalizing the economic situation by forcibly bringing up everybody's values and the whole of existence, the way people across the whole world live, right? And this would be maybe comparable to what the Brits did with the slavery thing, right? So they didn't have slavery in Britain for like 600 years by the time the trade was going on between Africa and America, pretty much. So they were then at a complete economic disadvantage to other countries who were using slaves. And so they were incentivized in some way to be like, hey, let's stop everybody else from using slaves, so that we can be more on a equal economic playing field. And that helped. That was beneficial to the whole of humanity, right? But yeah, that would be a better way to deal with this in terms of leaving a huge global legacy and having something for the American leg of the English language empire to hold up eventually and say, hey, this is what we did. Like the British at least have that one thing they get to hold up and go, hey, this is what we did. We stopped slavery across the whole world at a huge cost to our own empire, even though maybe it was also of a huge benefit. I don't know enough about it, but I just made an argument that maybe it was, right? Firstly, they're using a terrible analogy and emotive language, but secondly, just the idea that the only countries who can that it's a moral issue and that morally you're okay to put tariffs on other countries to protect your industries only if you are in a position that we can call backwards. Like they can't help but insult the people that they're supposed to be so proud of, right? And if you actually look at the tariffs, it's not like that. It's not like if you look at all the current tariffs that exist, that by any measure that you decide to call backwards, like whether it's ahead or behind in like I don't know, like economic stuff or like philosophical stuff or like conceptual um, ruling, whether it's a democracy or a different type of monarchy or whatever it is, whether you could whatever system of in front of or behind of, backwards or ahead of, right, that you want to choose, you can't go around and find that all the current existing tariffs fit this except for these new ones. It's not like that at all. So they're just even if they're saying this is how tariffs should be, this is the correct and moral way to apply tariffs, which I think I've already argued that that's not the case. Even if they were saying that that is the case and they were able to argue it, to then just be like, yo, and Trump's not doing that though, is he? Yeah, no, he's not, I guess. He's not, right? But neither is whoever else. I don't know. And that's not whataboutism. That's just more of why is your focus here anyway? Okay, it's current. But then if you're going to be honest, then you're going to open your eyes to the fact that many people who are doing this are not doing it in the way that you think. And many people or countries that you probably agree with or think that tariffs are good, the tariffs don't fit this model that you just described of being infinite industry protection or economically backward nations. And that would then maybe expose to you your own bias, and it would also lead you to come up with a better definition of when it's good or bad to apply tariffs. And maybe firstly an economic one. You're both economists, right? So like maybe an economic reason for doing it instead of a moral one would be good also. All right, peace out.
Of a tariff is to encourage people to stop going to China and abide by the laws that the Americans want, right? Like the minimum wage, the environmentalism, all that shit, right? You're basically forcing companies to abide by that. And so if you're pro-environment, you can't be against tariffs. Like if you're in the European Union and you're really big on green energy and environmentalism and ESG scores and shit, you would also be really big on tariffing companies that are trying to run away from this ideology by producing stuff in a country that doesn't have these policies.